I was in my small brick house on Maple Lane, the one with the faded blue door and the squeaky step that always gives me away when I try to leave quietly. The evening felt normal in that sleepy way I usually like. I had a cup of tea on the table, my laptop open, and a pile of laundry I kept promising I'd fold. I remember thinking my life was finally calm again, like the noisy parts had already happened and I was safe to breathe. Then my phone rang. I almost ignored it because the number was unknown, but something in me said to pick up. A man's voice came through, polite and careful. He introduced himself as Lewis Grant from Harrington and Company, Bank in London, England. I frowned because I don't even live in London, and I rarely speak to anyone at my bank unless I have a problem. He said he needed to confirm my identity because there was a situation at the branch involving people connected to my account. Asked what kind of situation, and he paused like he didn't want to scare me. Then he said the words that made my whole body go cold. Your sister and your parents are here right now, and they're with a woman who looks just like you. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers hurt. My sister, Chloe, was supposed to be at work, and my parents had told me they were out of town for the week. I told him he had the wrong person, but he insisted he didn't. He explained they were trying to move money from a savings account in my name, about £48,000, and they were pushing for it to happen quickly. When I asked why he was calling me instead of them, his voice dropped even lower. Because your mother told our staff not to contact you, he said, and that you don't know yet. My tea tasted bitter, and my living room suddenly felt too small to hold what I'd just heard. I drove to London today with my hands tight on the wheel, like the car was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Rain came and went, leaving the road shiny and gray. I kept replaying that sentence from the call. Your mother said you don't know yet. I passed my little brick house on Maple Lane and felt a sharp ache, as if I was leaving the last normal part of my life behind. I told myself it had to be a mistake, but my stomach didn't believe me. Harrington and Company. Bank sat on a busy street near a row of cafes. Inside, everything smelled like clean paper and warm lights. Lewis Grant met me by the front desk. He was a thin man in a dark suit, with kind eyes that looked tired. Miss Hart, thank you for coming, he said. We placed a temporary hold on the account. I nodded, but I couldn't feel my feet. He led me down a hallway and into a private room with glass walls. Through the glass, I saw them. My father, Daniel Hart, sat stiffly in a chair, his hands clasped like he was praying. My mother, Marissa Hart, kept adjusting her scarf. My sister, Chloe, stood close to them, her face pale and tight. And next to them was the woman. She turned her head, and I swear the room tilted. She had my eyes, my nose, my mouth, even the small mark near my left eyebrow. It was like seeing my own face, living a different life. I pushed into the room before Lewis could stop me. What is this? I demanded, my voice shaking. Chloe flinched and looked down. My mother started to speak, but no sound came out. The woman stood up, calm in a way that made me angry. Emma, she said, like she had practiced my name. I'm not here to hurt you. I stared at my father. You told me you were out of town, I said. He met my eyes, and I saw fear there, not just guilt. Lewis stepped in, gentle but firm. They requested a transfer, he explained, sliding a folder onto the table. Pound 48,000 from your savings. They also asked about a linked trust with £120,000. Because of the identity issue, we paused everything. My throat tightened at the numbers. That kind of money could change a life. It could also ruin one. The woman took a slow breath. My name is Claire, she said. I know this sounds impossible, but I need you to listen. My mother covered her mouth, tears slipping through her fingers. Chloe whispered, I'm sorry, like it was the only word she still had. I looked from face to face, and the only thing I knew for sure was this. Whatever secret they were hiding, it was big enough to bring them to London, big enough to copy my face, and big enough to break the story I thought I belonged to. We didn't argue in the bank for long because the truth has a way of making people quiet. After Claire said her name, my mother's shoulders folded in on themselves like she was suddenly too small for her own body. My father kept rubbing his hands together, the way he does when he's trying not to panic. Chloe just stood there, staring at the carpet as if the pattern could tell her what to do next. I wanted to scream at them, but my voice wouldn't come. It felt like someone had poured ice into my chest and told me to breathe through it. Lewis Grant asked if we could continue the conversation somewhere more private, and that made me laugh in a bitter way because we were already in a private room. Still, he gave us a moment, then offered a simple choice. Either leave and sort it out on our own, or go to a different room while he prepared the paperwork and explained the legal part later. My father cleared his throat and said, "We need to talk at home." The word home hit me strangely. My home was Maple Lane. Their home was Willow House near York. And now, somehow, Claire had entered the story like she had always been there, even though I'd never seen her once. I didn't want to ride with them, but I also didn't want to be alone. In the end, I followed their car north in my own, keeping them in sight like I was afraid they'd vanish and take the truth with them. The road felt endless. The sky was low and heavy, and my thoughts were loud. I kept remembering little moments from my childhood, my mother brushing my hair, my father calling me his girl, Chloe stealing my sweaters, and each memory started to look different, like a picture that changes when you tilt it. I wondered if they had been hiding this every time they hugged me. Willow House looked the same as always. Tall windows, pale stone, and a garden that tried too hard to be perfect. But the place felt foreign when I walked through the door. The hallways seemed narrower. The air felt thicker. Claire came in behind us, quiet and careful, holding a small bag and looking around as if she was stepping into a museum. Chloe offered to take her coat, then stopped halfway, awkward and unsure, like she didn't know what role she was allowed to play. We sat in the living room, the one with the old fireplace and the framed family photos. I used to love those photos. Now they felt like evidence. My mother sat on the edge of a chair, twisting a tissue until it looked like a thin white rope. My father sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the carpet. Chloe stayed by the window, arms crossed, pretending she wasn't shaking. Claire sat across from me, hands folded, her posture neat, like she had learned early how to stay small. I broke the silence. "Start from the beginning," I said. My voice came out sharp, and I didn't soften it. "And don't leave anything out." My father swallowed. "When you were born," he began, "there were 2 babies." He paused, like saying it out loud hurt. "Identical girls." I blinked, slow. "No," I said. It wasn't a real argument. It was just my mind refusing to open the door. "I'm not a twin." My mother finally looked at me, tears shining in her eyes. "You are," she whispered. "Emma, you are." My heart thudded, so hard it felt painful. "So where was she?" I demanded, pointing at Claire without meaning to be cruel, but unable to stop myself. "Where was she all this time? And why didn't you tell me?" My mother's face crumpled. "Because we were ashamed," she said. "And afraid." Claire's voice was calm, but it carried a tired weight. "I grew up in Manchester," she said softly, "with a foster family first. Then I was adopted when I was 9. She looked at my parents as she spoke, not at me, like she had spent years practicing how to say these facts without begging for anyone's pity. My adopted parents were decent people. Not perfect, but they tried. The word adopted rang in my head. "You gave her away," I said, staring at my parents. It sounded like an accusation because it was. My father flinched. "We did," he admitted. "And it's the worst thing we've ever done." Chloe's voice cracked. "I didn't know until last year," she said suddenly. "I found papers. I confronted Mom and Dad. They made me swear not to tell you." She looked at me then, eyes wet. "I thought I was protecting you, Em. I thought." Her voice failed, and she shook her head. "I don't know what I thought." My anger rose, hot and dizzy. "So you all knew," I said, my voice shaking now. "And I was the only one living in the dark." I turned to my mother. "Every birthday, every holiday, every time you told me family was everything, you were hiding this." My mother pressed her palm against her chest. "We told ourselves we'd fix it," she said. We told ourselves it was temporary. She took a shaky breath. We had debts, Emma. Not small ones. We owed £80,000. Your father's business failed. We were getting calls every day. People showed up at the door. We were terrified. She looked down at her hands. When we found out it was twins, it felt like the world was testing us, and we failed the test. I stared at her, trying to understand how money could become an excuse for something this big. So you chose, I said, my voice low. You chose one baby. My father's eyes filled, and his jaw tightened like he was holding himself upright. We thought we could keep one child safe, he said. We told ourselves we would come back for Claire when we were stable. He shook his head, disgusted with himself. But time passed. We paid down the debt. We rebuilt our lives. And the longer we waited, the more impossible it felt to admit what we'd done. Claire finally looked at me then. Her eyes were my eyes, but they held a different kind of history. I didn't know any of this until recently, she said. I had questions my whole life, but no answers. Then this year, I found a file. It had a name. Their names. She nodded toward my parents. I contacted them, not to punish them, but to understand. Her voice wavered for the first time. And because I was tired of being a blank space. My mother wiped her cheeks. We reached out because we thought we were ready, she said. We wanted to tell you properly. We planned it. We even picked a day. She laughed once, bitter and broken. But then fear took over again. We thought you'd hate us. We thought you'd leave and never come back. I stood up and paced because sitting still felt impossible. The family photos watched me from the walls. Me as a child in a yellow dress, Chloe with braces, my parents smiling like people with nothing to hide. I wanted to rip the frames down. I wanted to rewind time and catch the moment the lie started. My father's voice followed me. The paperwork is in the attic, he said quietly. We never got rid of it. The attic. Of course it was the attic. The place where people hide what they can't throw away. I climbed the stairs alone, my legs heavy. Dust and old wood met me at the top, and the air felt colder. In the far corner, behind Christmas decorations and boxes of forgotten things, I found a battered cardboard box with my mother's handwriting on it. My name and Chloe's, and then another label, faded but clear enough. Claire. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents, letters, and a small hospital bracelet that said, Baby B. There was a photo of my mother in a hospital bed, holding two swaddled babies, her face pale and frightened. Two tiny faces. Two identical little noses. Two lives. And then a letter, folded carefully, never mailed. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. I sat on the floor and read it, and with every line my chest tightened. It wasn't neat. It wasn't brave. It was raw and desperate, like she had written it in the dark while everyone slept. She wrote about love and fear and weakness. She wrote that she hoped Baby B would grow up safe. She wrote that she was sorry, over and over, like repeating it could make it true. When I finally went back downstairs, the living room was silent. Claire stood by the fireplace, looking at a family photo of me and Chloe as children. She set it down gently when she heard me. I'm not here to steal your life, she said, her voice soft. I stared at her, my throat burning. Then why did you come? She held my gaze. Because I got tired of being a secret, she said. And because when the bank called about that trust, I realized something. She took a breath, steadying herself. The money isn't the point. The point is that my whole existence has been treated like a mistake you can lock in a box. I don't want revenge. I just want the truth to stop being hidden. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I looked at my parents, at Chloe, at Claire, and I realized the worst part wasn't the money or the documents or even the years they stole. The worst part was how easily they had smiled while carrying the secret, how normal they had made the lie. And even with all my anger, one thought kept rising in my mind, stubborn and painful. If Claire had my face, then she also carried the same beginning as me. She was not an enemy. She was a missing piece. I didn't forgive anyone that night. I wasn't ready. But I also didn't tell Claire to leave. I just sat down, exhausted, and let the truth fill the room like heavy air, because once it's out, you can't put it back in the attic. The next morning, Willow House felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face, which was also my face, and it made my head ache. I made tea in my parents' kitchen, but my hands shook so badly, I spilled it on the counter. Chloe came in wearing yesterday's clothes, her hair messy, her eyes swollen. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. I didn't answer because if I did, I knew I'd either scream or cry, and I wasn't ready to do either in front of everyone. We drove back to London in 2 cars. My father, Daniel, drove like he was afraid of arriving, and my mother, Marissa, kept staring out the window as if the world might forgive her if she looked sad enough. Claire rode with me. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching the roads, calm on the outside, but I could feel how careful she was being, like she didn't want to take up too much space in my air. "I don't want to ruin your life," she said quietly as we passed the signs for the city. "I'm not here for a fight." I kept my eyes on the traffic and said the truth I could handle. My life already changed. I'm just trying to figure out what it is now. At Harrington and Company Bank, Lewis Grant met us in the lobby. He looked relieved to see me and uneasy to see my parents and Claire together. He led us into a larger meeting room and introduced a woman named Harriet Wells, a solicitor the bank used for sensitive cases. Harriet had a steady voice, sharp eyes, and the kind of calm that doesn't waste time. She laid out the facts without drama. The savings account in my name held £48,000, and any transfer needed my clear approval. The trust held £120,000, created years ago with wording that pointed to twins, which meant it was meant for 2 people, not 1. Hearing it said so simply made me feel strange, like the biggest secret of my life had been turned into neat sentences on clean paper. My mother tried to speak, but Harriet lifted a hand gently. "We're not here to judge," she said, though her face didn't soften much. "We're here to make sure no one is pressured and nothing improper happens." Lewis slid the transfer request across the table. My father's signature was there. My mother's was there too. Chloe's name wasn't, but her presence felt like another ink mark. I stared at the page and felt heat rise in my chest. "So you are going to take the money," I said, my voice low. "Not ask me, not warn me, just take it." My father's mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he said, "We panicked. We thought if we moved it first, we could explain later." That answer made my hands curl into fists under the table. Harriet asked me, very plainly, what I wanted. I surprised myself by speaking clearly. "Freeze the savings," I said. "Not forever. Just until my head stopped spinning." Lewis nodded and wrote it down. Then Harriet asked about the trust. I looked at Claire. She didn't look hungry for money. She looked tired of being treated like she didn't belong. Chloe's eyes were fixed on me, begging without words. My parents looked like they were waiting for a punishment they could understand, something like a fine or a bill. But this wasn't that kind of damage. I took a breath and said, "Split the trust evenly. £60,000 for Claire and £60,000 for me. That's what it was meant for." My mother made a small sound, half sob, half relief, and it made me angry all over again. "Don't," I snapped before I could stop myself. "Don't cry like I'm saving you. This isn't me being kind. This is me refusing to keep living inside your lie." Harriet nodded once, as if she respected that. Lewis looked at Claire and asked if she agreed, and Claire said, "Yes," in a steady voice. Then she added, "But I wanted in writing that no one can use Emma's name again. No more pretending." Lewis promised it would be handled properly. For the first time since the call, I felt a small piece of control return to my body, like my spine remembered how to hold me up. After the papers were signed, we stood outside the bank, and London moved around us like nothing had happened. Cars rushed past. People laughed at a nearby cafe. A man in a bright coat walked his dog like the world had no secrets at all. My parents hovered near me, unsure if they were allowed to speak. Chloe finally stepped forward. "Are you going to leave?" she asked, voice breaking. I looked at her, at the sister I grew up with, and it hit me that she was both guilty and trapped. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm going back to my house on Maple Lane. I need space. I need time. Chloe nodded like she understood, but her face said she was terrified of what space might turn into. Claire and I walked a little away from the others, stopping near a row of black railings. She looked at me carefully, as if one wrong word might make me slam a door.
"Thank you," she said.
I shook my head. "Don't make it about money," I replied, my voice tired. "This isn't a prize." Claire's eyes got glossy, but she didn't cry.
"I know," she said.
It's just the first time anyone has said, out loud, that I'm real enough to be counted. That sentence landed in me in a heavy way. I didn't know how to answer it, so I did the only thing I could do without lying. "I'm not ready to be close," I told her. "But I'm not going to pretend you don't exist. Not anymore." When I got back to my brick house on Maple Lane, the place felt both comforting and strange, like I had returned from a different life. I stood in my hallway, staring at the laundry pile I'd never folded, and I almost laughed because it was so ordinary. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my phone. I had messages from my mother, my father, Chloe. I didn't answer them. Instead, I opened a new contact and typed Claire with shaky fingers. I stared at it for a long time before hitting save. Outside, the street lamp flickered on, and the light spilled across my faded blue door like a quiet promise that the world was still turning. That night, Claire texted me first. It was simple. "I'm in a small hotel near King's Cross. I leave for Manchester tomorrow. If you ever want to talk, I'll pick up." I read it again and again. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. Another part of me wanted to ask 1,000 questions. What she ate as a child, what songs she liked, who held her when she was sick. In the end, I wrote back one sentence. "Safe travels. I'm not ready for calls yet, but I'm glad you reached out." It wasn't a warm message. It wasn't a cold one either. It was a bridge built from the only bricks I had. I still don't have a neat ending to tell people because real life doesn't tie itself up like a ribbon. My parents exposed a truth I never imagined, and no amount of £48,000 or even £120,000 can buy back the years they stole from Claire or the trust they broke in me. But I know this. The secret isn't in the attic anymore. It's out in the open, where it has to be faced. And even though it hurts, I'd rather live in a painful truth than in a comfortable lie. In my little house on Maple Lane, with my tea and my squeaky step and my cracked kitchen wall, I'm learning how to tell my story again. This time with the missing piece finally named.